Hi everyone, it is Friday, June 17th, 2022, and we are officially in a bear market territory. The S&P 500 is down 24% year to date as I am recording this video. And I have a quick message here, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe we'll call this a quick coaching class, but I think it's important to understand where we are. If you search your email from past coaching classes, and most recently, March of 2020, March, I think 13th to be exact, of 2020, kind of in the midst of COVID, where the S&P 500 was down 24% in 22 days. This message may sound very, very familiar because a lot of what I'm going to talk about we discussed at that coaching class on March 13th, and it was March 13th because I remember it was Friday the 13th, and the S&P 500 was down 24%, and by the end of the March, within 22 days. So very, very significant bear market, and that's really what we are in right now. We are officially in a bear market, which the definition is a drop in the market, and we're going to use S&P 500 throughout this conversation to discuss the market. And again, we all know that the market isn't just the S&P 500. There's other parts of the market, but right now in what is going on, there's really not anywhere to hide. Most of the asset categories are down, including bonds, because the Fed is in a interest rate raising situation to battle inflation. So there's not many places to hide in this kind of market. So I wanted to talk about some practice tips, some ideas, just some thoughts to maybe get this through. Now, as I mentioned, the message is going to sound familiar because we talked about a lot of this back in March. And I was adding it up. I have been through 7 market declines, market crashes, if you will, in the last 14 years, going back to 2008. And we've been through, obviously, some bad times in our country, and we could go all the way back to the Great Depression days when we really started to keep statistics on the markets. But of course, we have World War II. We have the Kennedy assassination. We have the Cuban Missile Crisis, 9/11, Black Monday of 1987. Of course, the 2008 Great Recession, the 2012 fiscal cliff conversation, if you folks remember that. 2015 was a negative year. 2018, December of 2018, was kind of a scary month in the markets. And of course, COVID. We know that was most recent. And the message that I've always given is actually pretty consistent. The bad times are not here to stay. I often say this too shall pass. But I also realize, folks, that it's not enough just to say, hey, hang in there, stick with it, this too shall pass, because it can get pretty nerve-wracking. And I have always been taught that we should try to put ourselves in other people's shoes and live life as if we're in their shoes. And we can kind of truly understand both sides. So I am sure that my clients and just folks that, even if you're not a client listening to this message, are feeling nervousness, feeling panic, feeling anxiety and stress, especially if you've recently retired and the paycheck's no longer coming in. I can imagine that you guys are feeling quite a bit of anxiety. Yes, and I will say fear. And fear is something very, very powerful, and it can lead us to make some kind of unfortunate decisions. So I want to talk about that today as well. So I wrote down some thoughts, and I said to myself, how can I be a good steward for my clients, a good coach for my clients? How can my team, because I have communicated these thoughts to my team, how can we make sure that we are there for the folks that give us a call and are nervous about just the world in general and everything that is going on. And then we have the portfolio returns and the market returns on top of that. How can we help them feel some type of peace of mind, some level of control in what's going on? So I'm going to lay out some practice tips in this video. I wrote down some notes here that we're going to talk about to kind of get us through the dark times and hopefully begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So the first thing I want to do is let's put this in perspective. Let's put this market crash in perspective with past market crashes. So right now, the S&P is in bear market territory. We're 24% down roughly year to date. Now that compares with COVID 2020, where COVID, I just mentioned, we were down 24% in 22 days. Now this probably feels almost worse than COVID, because COVID was a 24% drop in 22 days. It almost came out of nowhere so quickly, and then the market started to rebound right away. So this might feel a bit worse than the other 24% drop during COVID, because this is prolonged, right? We're 6 months into the 2022 market decline. So it's lingering, it's hanging around, it's constant. We're going to talk about the media. It's a constant message in the media as well. So it probably doesn't feel the same. Now, in 2008, many of you remember the Great Recession. The 2008 Great Recession, crisis, bear market, whatever you want to call it, lasted from October of 07 to March of 09. So roughly, 15 to 18 months long. Now, that's some good perspective. By the way, the S&P 500 was down 54% during that time frame. 54%. So, to put this kind of in perspective, we're not saying that this is a 2008 Great Recession or market crash. We're not saying that. The banks are way more capitalized. Americans have way more money. The housing situation is way better than it was in 2008. So we're not saying this is a 2008 event, but we are saying that, hey, we're 6 months into this. The last prolonged Great Recession market decline was 18 months long. So let's kind of put this in perspective and just understand where we are at this point. And then we have to talk briefly, real quick. We're going to come back to this later on, but we have to talk about the media. The news, the information that I hear being published on the popular financial channels, the financial publications, websites, email, text messages nowadays, social media is very, very similar to what I've heard in the past, almost identical. This is what I am hearing. This is one of the popular messages. You will hear this. Folks, this is unprecedented. Man, did I hear that in 2008? Did I hear that in COVID? Did I hear that about the fiscal cliff when the government was shutting down in 2012? Yes, we've heard it before. This is unprecedented. So if we've heard it before, is it really unprecedented? It might be different. The circumstances might be a little bit different. No two recessions are exactly the same, but I don't like the language, this is unprecedented. We've never seen this before, okay? Very similar to this is unprecedented. This time is different. Boy, have I heard that on the news lately. This time is different. And I always hear that. I heard that during COVID. I heard that during the Great Recession. And then, obviously hindsight's 2020, foresight is not. But is it really different when it comes to markets and how markets respond after a crash? So we'll get into that a little bit. So look, the media, they love the constant doom and gloom, which we're going to get back to in a second. So since, by the way, just a quick side note, since the 2008 market crash, the S&P 500 is up 408%. That's 4 times higher in that 14 years. So that's kind of an interesting statistic that we'll examine again some other facts later on. So why does the media send these messages? What is their purpose? I've told you many, many times, their job is to attract your attention. So how they attract your attention is by publicizing the very worst news and stories about humanity that there is. They'll pick the top 6 worst news stories and they'll repeat in order to attract our attention. Now, why do they want to attract our attention so bad? Well, it is about ratings. If we turn our focus and our attention on what we're doing in our day-to-day lives, and maybe we're retired and we're enjoying our day-to-day lives, we're playing golf, we're gardening, we're working around the house, we're spending time with kids and grandchildren, our attention is diverted from the news. And their job is to attract our attention. So again, our instincts are to pay attention to things that could possibly harm us. It's inside us. It's instinctual, okay? So when we perceive something that's going to harm us, we're going to pay attention. The news media knows this. It's about ratings. If we focus on the news and we watch what they are saying to us, their ratings go up, therefore their advertising revenue increases as well. So we really have to kind of understand that that is the game. So we're going to come back to that in a second. So number one, tip today is perspective. Let's put this crash in perspective with other crashes. And yes, it may feel different. It may be slightly different, right? No 2 crashes or recessions are identical. But don't use the words unprecedented. This time is different. Those type of thoughts and those type of patterns can lead to some really bad decision making when it comes to your long-term goals. And speaking of long-term goals, then the next topic I want to talk about is time horizon, right? So years ago, I put out a coaching class called The Incredible Shrinking Time Horizon. And as investors, when you are retiring or you're still investing, you're still in the growth mode, we have fantastic intentions. As investors, we have great intentions. Whether you're 55, 60, 65, 70, 75 years old, our intentions are, okay, I have a timeline. My timeline might be 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, 35, even 40 years to make sure that the money lasts. And that is the time horizon. The time horizon say, hey, we have to make sure our money lasts, and we have to make sure we have money to keep up or exceed inflation over this time horizon. So we have great intentions, and we pick a portfolio model based on our time horizon and also based on our risk tolerance. And one thing I've noticed is risk tolerances can change. And it can change, for some folks, it can change on a daily basis. You feel good one day, you take more risk. You feel bad one day about the markets, you take less risk. So we have to try to separate ourselves from that kind of situation and just understand that we pick a time horizon and a portfolio with a certain risk tolerance or risk preference, if you will. So we have these great intentions, and we say, okay, we're going to build this portfolio, we're going to have a plan, and we're going to focus and we're going to follow the rules of investing. The rules of investing are simple. You've heard me say this before. Diversify. Don't have all your eggs in one basket. Don't own all large growth stocks. Small companies, large companies, value companies, small value, fixed income bonds, well-diversified portfolio. So diversify, number one, right? Number two, rebalance. Boy, you probably are sick at me saying rebalance, but it is the strategy to follow. It is one of the golden rules of investing. You have a portfolio with multiple asset classes, diversified, and you have to rebalance back to the target because the market will move those asset classes. Asset classes will change every single day. Large stocks operate differently than small stocks. Value stocks operate differently. Bonds, of course. Rebalance back to your target, right? It's a math equation. And then number 3, stay disciplined. So diversify, rebalance, stay disciplined throughout your time horizon. So following the rules of investing are key. It's going to lead to the best chance of success. And the rules sound very simple, right? Very simple rules, but they're hard to follow because our emotions, our instincts, our perceptions, plus the media exacerbating all those things leads us to make some unfortunate decisions. And in this situation, our good intentions, our timeline of, for example, 30 years can shrink to 3 minutes that quick. Okay? And we've seen it happen before. So we have to focus on, we have to think about what we're doing here. So let's talk about how we consume this information that we're literally bombarded with. It's very difficult to get away from it. And how we consume this information. How can we help ourselves understand exactly what it is? Because we can get caught up in it. We can turn on the news and we can have an anxiety attack in 10 minutes. We can go to Facebook and scroll through the news feed and have an anxiety attack. And we just have to understand what that is. It's a competition. It's a good word. It's a competition for your attention. Okay, and everybody's competing for your attention, for your eyeballs. So then they can follow up with a nice little advertisement. So how do we battle against this? Well, number one, I think is we almost have to step outside ourselves. And what I mean by that is almost like, you physically leave your body and you're watching yourself consume that information. And because when we're inside and we're living it and we're watching it, it's very difficult to separate ourselves from what the intention is of the media. So if we can somehow, when we're consumed with this doom and gloom, which is constant, rinse, repeat, worst 6 stories every single night on the news media, if we can separate ourselves from exactly what is going on and what it is and understand what it is, I think we'll be better off. So just really being aware of what their intention is when they're trying to attract our attention, okay? So let's try to do that. And also, it's funny, we have to take some personal responsibility, right? Nobody's turning on the news. We are turning on the news. Nobody's picking up the phone and checking your Facebook for you. You're picking up the phone and checking your Facebook for you. So we are, in a way, yes, addicted to that kind of information, and we are kind of doing it to ourselves. So, I was taught long ago, you can choose to be angry, you can choose to be upset, you can choose to be in a bad mood based on what somebody might say to you that day or something that you read that day. But it's ultimately a choice. You can also choose not to be that way. You can say, you know what, I'm not going to let this affect me. Even if I completely block it and I don't even see it, again, we're bombarded with it because your next door neighbor is going to come up to you and say, hey, did you hear about this? So we're bombarded with this information, this negative information. So we can choose how we respond to the negative information. I think that's also something good to really, really think about. Okay. Let's see here. What can an investor do to let the logical part of their brain take over? So I already mentioned earlier that we are, as human beings, we are driven by our emotions, our instincts, and our perceptions multiplied by the media. And that can overwhelm our logical part of our brain. So the logical part of the brain says, hey, I know what to do. I need to diversify, rebalance, and stay disciplined. That's the logical part of our brain. I know that's what I'm supposed to do. But again, emotions, perceptions, instincts, the media sensationalizes things, and then all of a sudden, that takes over the logical part of our brain. So I really think just understanding the rules and separating ourselves from that situation is really helpful. So I hope that helps as well. Now, let's kind of wrap this up with some interesting facts. And again, this might lend some perspective to things. Since 1947 through April of 2022, we have had 14 bear markets. Bear markets are defined as drops of 20% or more. 14 bear markets. I mentioned earlier, no two bear markets are exactly alike. Okay? 8 out of 14 bear markets preceded a recession. Okay? Now, what's interesting about that, I think most people think it's always a recession. No. The others did not precede a recession. So, will we have a recession right now? Are we already in a recession? Not 100% sure, right? We don't know. Recessions are backwards thinking. But 8 out of 14 bear markets preceded recessions. The others did not. So, there's no guarantee we are going into a recession this year. This one was really interesting. In more than half of the 14 bear markets, the S&P 500 hit a low point within 2 months of initially dropping to 20%. Okay? Then the returns were largely positive. Okay? I'm going to say that again. In more than one half of the 14 bear markets, the S&P 500 hit a low within 2 months of dropping 20%. Then the returns were positive. And here were the numbers. Positive 7% over the next 6-month period. Positive 18% over the next 12-month period. So what that kind of says is, you cannot predict exact bottoms. You cannot predict exact tops for that matter. But when that bottom is in, the recovery from a bottom of a bear market is pretty fast and furious. Positive 18% over a 12-month period. So some food for thought there. So let's leave you with this. 3 more kind of practice tips or ideas. Have courage. Okay? Simple as that. Have courage. What is courage? In my mind, courage is feeling fear. It's okay to feel fear. Acknowledge the fear. It's okay. But then act anyway. So feel the fear and move forward through it. Move forward anyway. To me, that's the definition of courage. It's okay to feel the fear. Just move forward, and stay focused. Have faith. Okay, number 2, have faith. General faith. Right? We're not talking, religious faith. That could be part of it, but just have general faith that you will be okay. Have faith you'll be okay. But also have faith in the plan. You have already prepared for this because you have built a diversified portfolio based on your time horizon, based on your risk tolerance. You're going to follow the rules, rebalance, and stay disciplined. You have a plan. You have already prepared for this. When you're in it, it feels like it will never end. It will end. We'll get through this. There'll be a light at the end of the tunnel. One of the things I kind of like to say is, look, I don't know where the next 20% is going to go, right? Positive or negative, but the next 100% is always up. So just kind of remember that. And then have wisdom. I already mentioned before, if we can kind of step outside ourselves, understand the information that we're consuming, understand what their goal is, the media's goal is when they're giving us these messages. Is the information that you're consuming beneficial to your plan, and is it beneficial to your mindset, your peace of mind, right? And I would say 98% of the time, the information that we're taking in is not lending to more peace of mind. It's lending us to less peace of mind. So just remember that. Turn it off. I mean, it might be as simple as turning it off. Yeah, the neighbor might come over and tell you about the latest, news story, but if at all possible, turn it off. And finally, my team, myself, we are always available for you. We are here for you. Rely on us. I just mentioned I've been through 7 of these in the last 14 years. We have always come through. We'll get through this. I have guided my clients through rough waters before. I'm going to guide you through them again. We're going to get to port safely, and then the sun is going to come out. I've been through this before. You're not in this alone. Also, give us a call if you have any questions or concerns, right? Our door is always open. I tell everyone our door is always open. Feel free, pick up the phone, 410-208-1004. You can email me, info@mfswealth. Myself, my team, we are here for you, and hang in there and we'll get through this. I hope this message has helped you guys out. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk soon.